Araxia may very well be one of the greatest frames that DE has made ever, and I don't say that lightly. Everything about her design is absolutely extraordinary, so if you've clicked on this video looking for an insane build for Steel Path, then you're in the right place. And if you have no idea what Araxia is, then don't worry, I will be covering absolutely everything in this video, so sit tight. I've put up some timestamps so you guys can go to whatever part is relevant to you. Speaking of relevancy, we're almost at 100 subscribers, and it would mean so much if we could hit that goal with this video. I've had multiple YouTube channels over the years, but I've never passed that 100 subscriber mark, so it would be sweet as. Hello everyone, this is Aaron or Flashes, and today I'm gonna go over everything you need to know about Araxia and also my favorite build to use on her. Firstly, we'll look at how to get Oraxia, then I'll cover her abilities, and then we'll have a look at building her and also how to play her. This is going to be a long video, but trust me, watching through to the end is super important as there's a lot of information and choices that you'll have to make depending on it. So without further ado, to get Araxia, we need to grind the wayyyy quest in Duviri. Don't worry, if hearing Duviri makes you cringe, you'll be happy to know that in the wayyyy quest, you only use your warframe. It's just set in Duviri. So to access the quest, you just go to navigation, click Duviri at the top right, and then wayyyy right there. Now inside of the quest, there are 6 stages that need to be completed, followed by a boss fight. So the first 4 stages are various little puzzles like this generator one, or they'll have you kill a few enemies or something. For the most part, it isn't anything to worry about, but in stage 5, you will have to fight Araxia herself. For this, I recommend choosing high DPS weapons in selection, as in the phases of the fight, you'll notice that Araxia actually has like basically no defense, so you can just beam her down, and there's these little intermission phases where a bunch of little spiders are going to try to attack you, and you just, if you're not paying attention, they will kill you, so yeah, be careful about that. But otherwise, after you beat Araxia, you will get to do the final boss, which is just a big fat boy, which shouldn't cause you much trouble at all. After each run of the quest, you have a chance of receiving one of Araxia's blueprints. However, it isn't guaranteed, and you most likely won't get her blueprints in this way. But you'll also receive Scuttler husks, and these are essentially a currency for which you can purchase Araxia's blueprints from a Kritis in your Dormizon. So now that you have Araxia, let's talk about her abilities. Araxia's passive ability allows her to go invisible for 8 seconds upon a wall latch, and the timer resets each time you wall latch. Which means that if you time it correctly, you can be invisible all the time. And this invisibility doesn't have any conditions either. Like, you don't have to actually stay wall latched for the invisibility to stay on. Like, you could just run around with the effect if you'd wish. And also, you can attack freely while invisible, unlike Ivara's invisibility, which is disabled whenever you attack or slide. So, all in all, a passive which will be really useful for survivability. Her first ability has her pounce on an enemy, which upon death will drop a number of health and energy orbs. This ability, while it looks simple at first, is actually super scalable. The reason for this is that this ability can finish off enemies even if the attack wouldn't do enough damage normally. So that sounds weird, but let me explain. When an enemy's health is below 50%, Mercy's Kiss, which is the first ability, will just instantly kill them. So if Mercy's Kiss only actually did 100 damage, and let's say this imaginary enemy has 1000 health, if we get our enemy to say 490 health, Mercy's Kiss will still one-shot them. Pretty sick if you ask me. Also, I forgot to mention that this ability can be used from any state. You could be in a wall latch and instantly use this on an enemy 40 meters away. And another thing to note is that enemies available to one-shot will have a symbol above their head, and if you use the ability looking at a crowd of enemies with only some of them having the symbol, you will automatically home to the enemies that are actually ready to kill. Araxia's second ability shoots a web in an AoE, which slows down, damages, and applies damage vulnerability. You can have up to 3 of these active at a time, and to be honest, that's basically all there is to it. Actually, to be fair, slow down is a bit of an understatement. Enemies that are within the AoE are actually cocooned, so they cannot move or attack for quite a while. Her third ability is to shoot 10 auto-targeting poison darts, which have guaranteed status chance. So you just need to use this ability looking in the general direction of a group of enemies, and the darts will hit them evenly. If there is only one enemy, then all 10 darts will target it. Also, killing enemies which are poisoned from this ability will spawn a Scuttler, which are these little spiders which do some little damage. One thing to note is that these Scuttlers can actually lower the instant kill point on enemies for Araxia's first ability. Remember when I said that her first ability insta-kills enemies below 50% health? Well, Scuttler damage actually reduces the Mercy kill threshold, and as long as you have the option to Mercy an enemy, Mercy's Kiss will one-shot them. and it's like from any range basically. So it's possible to one-shot enemies above 50% health as well. Araxia's fourth, final, and coolest ability unleashes her spider legs and transforms her into a whole different beast. She gets a number of buffs and some interesting mechanics as well. Firstly, she becomes immune to all status effects, which is super useful in higher level Steel Path, where every second enemy is an Eximus. She also gets a huge buff to her health, which is nice. Then we have the really strong mechanic she has in this form. All of the ranged weapons you use are imbued with toxin, but not as toxin damage within the weapon, no, but as a separate instance of damage, kind of like Zada's Whisper. This kind of stuff is always useful because you still get the damage you modded for from your weapon, but with an additional damage instance put on top of everything else without any conflicts or worries. Also, killing enemies makes them explode with toxin damage and status, 100%. Finally, pressing the button to roll will actually make Araxia shoot a web onto any surface and pull herself onto it like Spider-Man. And yes, if the surface is a wall, she will automatically wall latch, enabling her passive ability. So those were her abilities, and hopefully I've provided a comprehensive explanation of each of them. Now we can move on to the build guide, so I'll be showing you the build that I use, which is easily Steel Path ready. I can potentially go to level cap if you use the right equipment, although I haven't tried it yet. So before we get started, here are some ground rules for the following build. I am not using any helmet abilities. There are some good helmet abilities you could use, like Nourish for her first or second ability, and feel free to do so, but I personally think Araxia is super balanced already, and her kit is actually quite fun to play. Also, as always with my builds, I try not to make them dependent on other equipment. You can use any weapons with this warframe, but I've opted to use weapons like Ignis Wraith, the Latum, and Dual Ichor, as I think these three work really well for the build, and I will give you a little bit of an explanation for why that is. So these weapons are not going to get you to level cap, okay? They're just not optimized well for that, but for the majority of Steel Path content, the Ignis Wraith is just gonna shred in synergy with the rest of our abilities. The reason why I use Latum as a secondary is mainly just to handle the acolytes, because Ignis Wraith is not very good at dealing with them, but yeah, you basically just need a high damage, high DPS weapon to deal with them. And the Dual Ichor is just because it's a really good toxin weapon. I mean, with this build, since we're going to be in our fourth ability all the time basically, you're not really going to be using your melee weapon, but as I said, in that case that you do end up having to use it, the Dual Ichor is a really good choice. For my build, I try to maximize strength and range while tanking duration. See, while Araxia's second and third abilities are quite useful, I personally don't think they're the highlight of her kit. They can easily become very powerful if you build around them, but I'd much rather build around her fourth since it's so different and cool. This is why I'm tanking duration instead of efficiency. With all that being said, even after tanking duration, the abilities are still perfectly usable. For example, the web from the second ability still lasts 17 seconds, which is more than enough to get value out of it. So for range, we're using Stretch and Augur Reach. Then for strength, we use Blind, Rage, and Augur Secrets. Since our playstyle will have her fourth channeled all the time, along with using her other abilities very frequently, having a large energy pool is super convenient, thus Prime Flow. I've also put Streamline for more efficiency and Fleeting Expertise to trade some duration for more efficiency. If you're wondering why I'm going through all this trouble, it's because we're using Blind Rage, which tanks an entire 55% efficiency. Is it worth using 2 whole extra mods to bring that efficiency up? Well, yes and no. Just looking at the numbers, it makes a lot more sense to use Streamline and something like Augur Message instead of Fleeting Expertise, but this brings the energy cost for all of our abilities up. When I tested this in game, I found that Mercy's Kiss was spending more energy to cast than it was actually replenishing. Arcane Energize can only do so much, and when you have a channeled ability on all the time, along with abilities which are used rapidly, we get energy issues. This is why I've personally favored efficiency over duration for this build. Feel free to try out the alternative and see if it works for you, but I doubt it would be playable as you scale to harder enemies around level 500. Finally, for the mods, we've also got Archon Continuity. I know I said we were tanking duration earlier, and we are. It just happens that the mod we need gives us duration. We're using Archon Continuity for the special effect that abilities which inflict toxin will also inflict corrosive on top. This means armor stripping. Yay! For the arcanes, I'm using Arcane Energize as mentioned and Molt Augmented. There are two other arcanes that almost seem like they were made for Araxia. These are Arcane Arachne and Arcane Crepuscular. I don't use either, as Arachne is annoying to play, and for Crepuscular I'd rather get an additional 60% ability strength over a few minutes over only 30, and a minor buff to my crit damage. This isn't a crit build in the first place. Finally, let's quickly look at Archon shards. You'll definitely want to have around 2 green shards with the additional toxin damage selected, but it's not necessary. And other than that, it's really up to preference. I've put 3 red ability duration shards on. So that's the build. It's quite balanced and it's extremely fun. I think DE hit the nail on the head when designing Araxia, because gosh, she is so fun. And the thing is, she isn't the type of warframe to nuke maps or even rooms, and yet she still feels so powerful. At the start of a mission, we pop our 4th and latch whenever we need energy, or we have a lot of enemies who are available to one-shot using our 1st due to our 3rd ability. We'll melee them and then latch back onto a wall. To kill enemies more efficiently, we should firstly use our 2nd ability to trap them in place, then our 3rd to armor strip, and then finally use our main weapon to absolutely annihilate them. Keep in mind that this build alone won't be able to get you to level cap, but you can definitely create a loadout using the build to do so. If any of you take inspiration from this build for your own level cap builds, then do let me know in the comments. So that was the build guide for Araxia, everyone. I hope the information I provided was useful to you, and perhaps Araxia will be your new favorite warframe. I know she's my favorite now. Well, after Nova, of course. So if you're feeling up to it, consider subscribing. We're almost at 100 subscribers, and I'm currently thinking about what kind of special video I could make for the milestone. Oh, and liking the video would also help out a ton, as it will tell the algorithm to show the video to more people. I read all your comments, so feel free to tell me when I've said something completely wrong. I do try to back up all my statements using the official wiki, but I do get some stuff wrong, so comment and I promise I'll reply to you for sure. Anyways, this has been Flashes. See ya. The Latem is just mainly for the, what are they called? Fuck, what are they called? Like, violence, angst, what are they called again? Ah, shit. What are those guys called? Oh, fuck, what are they called? What are they called? Acolytes, that's what they're called. Okay.